If you asked an artificial intelligence to grade its own writing, you'd probably expect it to be a little generous with itself. Most of them are, but one of them isn't. One of them looks at its own work and gives it lower marks than anyone else does. So here's the question. Is that AI being unusually honest? Or is it just genuinely worse? We ran a study where 4 AI models, Claude, Gemini, GPT, and Kimi, each wrote answers to the same set of prompts, and then each model graded all 4 sets of answers, including its own. This gives us a clean way to measure self-preference. Compare the score a model gives its own answer to the score the other 3 judges give that same answer. The gap is the favoritism. 3 of the 4 models behave the way you'd expect. Claude rated its own writing about 2.5 points higher than its peers did. GPT, about 1.33 points higher. Gemini, a smaller but still positive bump of 2/3 of a point. Different sizes, same direction. Self-flattery in 3 different shades. Then there's Kimi. Kimi rated its own writing nearly 3 full points lower than the other judges did. A self-preference score of -2.87. This is the opposite of every other model. On a coin that has self-love on one side, Kimi landed on the other. There are 2 ways to read this. Maybe Kimi is the most honest evaluator in the group, willing to give itself the low marks the others can't bring themselves to. Or maybe Kimi's own answers really are weaker, and Kimi simply has better judgment about its own quality. We can actually tell the 2 apart with the data. Here's the tell. Look at how the other 3 judges scored Kimi's answers. The average is around 5.2 on a 10-point scale. The other 3 models' answers, scored by the same judges, sit between 8 and 9. This is not a close call. The peer consensus is that Kimi's answers genuinely score lower in this evaluation setup. The other judges aren't being mean. They agree across the board. So Kimi's low self-score isn't humility. It's largely accuracy. Kimi can see the same quality gap that everyone else sees. We can go one level deeper. Break the scores down by rubric, and the gap concentrates in one place, on the criterion called constrained adherence. Basically, did the answer follow the format the prompt asked for? Kimi penalizes itself by almost 5 points. And by task category, the gap is biggest in logic and math. 5.5 points lower on logic, 4.5 lower on math. On softer prose tasks, the gap is small. This isn't a global sense of inadequacy. It's targeted. Kimi is, in this setup, weaker on the strict format tasks, and Kimi knows it. Now, the part that complicates the honesty story. If Kimi were simply unbiased, you'd expect its scores of the other 3 models to be even-handed. They aren't. When we measure Kimi's biases toward the other 3 models, one of them stands out. Kimi has a measurable preference for Claude, plus 0.3 of a point, every time Claude's name is in the byline. So Kimi isn't bias-free. Kimi is differently biased. Less self-love, but a soft spot for one of its peers. This is the lesson worth holding on to. Self-preference and accuracy are not opposites. A model can rate itself low because it really is weaker, and a model can rate itself high because it really is stronger, and in both cases the score has nothing to do with honesty. What gives the bias away is the structure of the errors. Where does the overscoring happen? Which peers does the model lean toward? What kinds of tasks bring the gap out? When you see one model behave dramatically differently from the others in an evaluation, the temptation is to call it the honest one, the contrarian, the truth teller. Sometimes that's right. More often, the outlier just has a different mix of strengths, weaknesses, and quiet preferences than the rest of the group. The interesting models aren't the ones who like themselves more. They're the ones whose errors give away their structure. The full study, with all the data, is linked below. Thanks for watching.